when you talk about a mentality of training, it's not just working hard, it's working smart. It's understanding the mental discipline that comes with everything.
You are listening to the Pursuit of Excellence podcast, brought to you by Carlisle Performance Systems, located in San Jose, California. Episode number 17, titled The 5 Common Denominators of the 1,000 plus professional athletes that Pete Bommarito has worked with. Pete Bommarito is the owner of Bommarito Performance Systems, located in Miami. He has 2 locations. They train professional athletes, college athletes, the adult population, high school athletes. It is the who's who and the mecca in Miami for training and helping people get better. He has trained numerous professional athletes, including Carlos Gonzalez, Sloan Stephens, Miguel Cabrera, Frank Gore, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Ezekiel Elliott, Alejandro Bedoya, you name it, he has trained them. We're going to discuss his 5 common denominators, the characteristics that he has known and that he has noticed of some of these elite level athletes. It's no secret that they're successful at what they do. They have a formula, and there are things that Pete is going to talk about and he's going to shed some light on that hopefully you as a listener can take some of those ingredients, can take some of those characteristics that they have and implement it into your own performance plan for whatever it is that you're trying to do. Pete Bommarito, thank you for being on the show, and here he is. We're going to dive into a couple topics, man. But first, before we do that, tell us a little bit about how you've arrived. For those that don't know you, and that's far and few between in our industry, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are, Pete.
Yeah, I started as an assistant strength coach at Ball State University. From there, I ventured down to IMG Academies in Bradenton, Florida, where I was able to work with, both the high school athlete, the youth athlete, the college athlete, and even, at the time they were a big sports agency. So I got to train all of the IMG represented pro athletes and people going into the pro, like NFL draft prep and stuff like that. After I worked there for 5 years, I ventured down here to South Florida and I started my brand. I was initially a partner in a different company for 5 years. And then in 2009, I decided to do it myself and formed Bommarito Performance Systems. And then once, the education part really came through, I incorporated Bommarito University in 2013. So BPS has been up and running since 2009. And then we've been going strong now for about 5 years with regards to the university with the education.
Now, I recall visiting you in South Florida when you were working for that company. Yeah. And it's just amazing how far you've come. What year was that? About 2000?
I mean, the other company, I was at the other company from 2004 to 2009. So I signed a 5-year term, and my 5 years expired. I decided that I wanted to do it myself.
Yeah, man, and that you have. And I just remember us talking about you venturing on your own, and you haven't looked back.
Yeah.
And we met through a future Hall of Fame player in Frank Gore. When I was with the Niners, I had him during the season, and Frank, we used to talk about when he'd go home to Miami, he'd say, man, my man Pete. And man, I'll tell you what, it's been amazing. And that leads us to our topic of today, 5 common denominators of elite athletes. You've trained probably over 1,000 plus different athletes. I know you're not into name dropping, but could you just share with the audience some of the elite level athletes in different sports that you've trained?
Yeah, I mean, we have to start with Frank Gore, obviously. He's like our poster boy.
Yeah.
For everything that we're going to talk about, the 5 common denominators. He's special to me because, back then, all the University of Miami players used to stay at Miami to train for the NFL draft. Nobody ever left. And Frank was the first guy to leave because he just felt that he needed to kind of get away and focus on, nutrition and getting his weight where he needed to be. And obviously he's got the well-documented injuries. And, a lot of people were surprised he came out early. And a lot of people didn't think that based off of him being a running back and him having major knee surgeries, multiples in college, that the wear and tear was too much for the league. And yet here he is still going strong in 2018. So it's been 14 years now.
Unbelievable. You guys have done a great job supporting to get there. Give us some of the other elite level athletes. Give us some baseball, some other football guys. You've had a bunch of them down there.
Yeah, we're doing great with football. I mean, I think the thing we're most proud of is the fact we're so well-rounded. I mean, if you look at Morgan Moses, Marcus Gilbert on the offensive line, you look at the up-and-comers with D-line with Chris Jones and Yannick and Emmanuel Agba, all the young players that are really up and coming, linebackers like Deion Jones, wide receiver, like Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill. Obviously, we're well known with running backs with Gore and LaShawn McCoy and Le'Veon Bell and even Jordan Howard now. I love the fact that we're well-rounded. I used to be known as the speed guy because I do draft prep and my guys run fast, but I'm so thankful and happy that we've got so many great players at all different positions, even like Gronkowski, Greg Olsen. I met a lot of these guys through draft prep, and a lot of them come back consistently every year, which I'm very, very proud of, that I train them well to go into the draft, but they always seem to find their way back here because they like the well-rounded training system that we offer. And I think that it's I'll never take credit for anybody's success, but I think we do a good job of the supportive role of what a strength coach is and just keeping them healthy as much as possible. With baseball, I mean, we're doing well with baseball. I mean, obviously our most well-known guy is Miguel Cabrera. He's had a storied Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
But now JD Martinez, I mean, if he, knock on wood, continues what he's done and wins the Triple Crown, I mean, that's going to be 2 Triple Crown winners under our belt. So JD Martinez is going strong. And, our baseball program overall is basically equal to our football program now with the number of star players and everybody up and coming from minor league to these academies down in Venezuela and the Dominican Republic and the Bahamas. And, we got a great stranglehold on even the market of young players that are able to sign major league contracts at age 16. We've done a great job with that. Pro tennis, I mean, Sloan Stephens is continuing on her, well-deserved path of greatness. I mean, she could be one of the best ever. I started training Sloan when she was 13 years old. I'm very proud of the fact that we're able to develop when they're young and look at the success she's had now. Or Florencia Galarza with soccer, Alejandro Bedoya with soccer, Udonis Haslem in the NBA. I think that, overall, we're very well-rounded. We can train any athlete, any sport. And I think it all comes down to the key factors of what a strength and conditioning coach really does. And it ties right into the 5 points you're going to go through.
Little known fact. I went to college with Sloan Stephens' mother.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, I know Sybil well. She definitely did a great job of, working with Sloan and being her manager and everything.
Oh, yeah. She was a swimmer. Boston University. Boston. So, Pete, it's amazing with all the athletes. And I'm fortunate that we've built a really good relationship over the years. I've been down there. I've seen your location 2 or 3 times. We've talked shop. Right? I've gotten indoctrinated into the Pete Bommarito speed methodology. I went down to your workshop, and then we had a nice little one-on-one time together, which is great. Tell me, when you structure your programs for these elite level athletes, what approach do you take, just in general?
I mean, number one, it's got to be through the medical system. It has to be, for a number of reasons. Number one is I believe in it. I believe that the overlap between medical and training, back in the old days, it was kind of, that overlap was fought a lot, where strength coaches and athletic trainers and physical therapists are so afraid to get into each other's realm. I think that in today's world of this industry, the overlap isn't fought anymore. It's absolutely necessary. So my medical team is well rehearsed in training, and we're well rehearsed in the medical field. The overlap is absolutely necessary as long as everybody understands their role. So it starts and ends with not just an evaluation at the beginning to get a baseline, but legitimately evaluating them before every single session. And we take that approach, and we have our periodization models. We have our our structure, we have our uploads and downloads, all that set. But the key is, can you manipulate those variables depending on what you see at that point in time? And from a medical perspective, you got to have great therapists that are great manual therapists that can tell you, the nervous system is up, the nervous system is down. We need to adjust this exercise with this different diverging force to make it appropriate for this athlete at this time. And that's the key. It's not about the holy grail of what exercise you choose. Exercise is exercise. You have press, you pull, you squat, you have posterior chain. It's how you modify each one that fits the athlete at that moment in time that I think is the job of the strength coach in today's industry.
Sure. Now, who does your medical team consist of?
We have a physical therapy department. We have a chiropractic department. And we have a massage and neuromuscular therapy department. Those are the three main heads. But with that, you have all the specialties. Like our massage therapists are trained in MAT, which is muscle activation techniques. Our physical therapists are trained in manual therapy. They're trained in kinesiotaping. They're trained in BFR, blood flow restriction. Our chiropractors are acupuncturists. Our chiropractors are also MAT therapists, ART therapists. And you have all the different medical disciplines and specializations. I think you have the three parent companies that need to get into the different realms. And when you look at it, we have about 14 different medical disciplines. Even Pilates and yoga, I think that those aren't flexibility and core training disciplines. They are medical disciplines. They operate under my medical direction, and they operate within my medical team with the same type of feedback that all my therapists give. And I think that's why we've had so much success with it.
Sounds like it. I would imagine you have a nutritionist on staff as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure,
we have high-level consultants that work with us. We have doctors that can do really high-level analysis, whether it's blood work analysis in terms of micronutrient deficiencies, or blood work analysis with regards to enzyme function or food sensitivity testing. That's the really high-level stuff. I think that you have to have medical doctors on staff that you trust that's going to do that efficiently and ethically. And, in addition to that, we just have the baseline sports nutritionist that's going to help the general stuff in terms of just meal plan construction. We have two different teams of sports chefs, and I think it's important to have chefs that can follow guidelines and manipulate accordingly.
That's amazing. You guys got a phenomenal system, which I knew, and I think the audience is becoming privy to that. So when we look at the support function of what you guys provide to these superstar athletes, professional athletes that you guys have across the board, soccer, tennis, football, baseball, and so forth, the topic of this episode are the 5 common denominators. The 5 common denominators that you've seen that these elite level athletes have. So we're going to start with Pete Bommarito's number 1, which is mentality. Talk to us about that.
The mentality is beyond work ethic. Like, I hear that term, and work ethic is one of my 5 because it's a well-known term, but the term work ethic, just gets overused too much. When you talk about a mentality of training, it's not just working hard, it's working smart. It's understanding the mental discipline that comes with everything. Like, we start our sessions off with what we call camps, or some people call warm-up. If you look at the great ones, they will put as much mental focus into every single rep of every single exercise, even during the warm-up preparation phase, as they do when they play or when they train high-level speed work or an intense max effort lift. It's almost like there could be a nuclear war going on behind them. They're focusing so much on my little prep exercise. It's just a mentality. And the great ones, that's how they focus. That's how they play. They can block out all external noise, whether it be the crowd, the opposing team, everything, and just legitimately focus on the task at hand. You see the great ones, they train the same way. And it doesn't matter how important you feel something is. It could be a regeneration exercise. It could be understanding the discipline of how to go through an MAT session, which is more challenging than people think. It's not a massage. It's not a flexibility session. It's actual work. And you have to get mentally in tune with your body to understand how those systems work. Same way with Pilates, same way with yoga. The great ones just have the mentality when it comes to every repetition of training and recovery.
Everything counts, right? Everything counts. That's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, as a coach, Okay, you're in the presence of greatness, as you've just alluded to. One where detail matters. Everything that they do matters. How do you approach that as a coach?
Same way. I mean, they're the same exact way. I mean, I coach every repetition as if I'm coaching in the Super Bowl or in the World Series. I mean, it's the same mental approach. If we ask them to be on, we have to be on.
Love it.
And it's all about the dedication to that task at hand. I mean, it's not like we can't have fun. Of course, we can have fun. We can joke around a little bit. You got to have a relaxed atmosphere, but at the same time, when it's time to focus, you have to coach as you want them to prescribe. So my demonstrations have to be on point. My coaching cues have to be simple enough, but effective enough. And when we hit that drink break, it's all about education. You don't ever hear me talking about general things. It's all about what we just did, why we did it, what we're going to do, and why we're going to do it. And I think that keeps everybody engaged, and that's why it's so important.
Now, you're in Miami. It's a lot to do out in Miami now, right? A lot of guys go to Miami because it's a fun city. Are there times, or have there been times, where one of these elite level athletes that you've trained, they've come to a training session, they may not have been all there, right? They might have still been out, or they might have just rolled from a club coming to a training session. How have you encountered that? And two, how do they lock it in? How do they get back to getting the most out of why they came?
Yeah, I think that, of course I've encountered it. I think any performance coach at this level or any level has encountered that. I don't look at, I think the Miami thing's a little overplayed. I mean, of course it's a fun city, there's a lot to do, but if somebody wants to go out and have a good time, I don't care where you are in the world, you can find ways to stay out and have a good time. I think that's universal to anybody that works with athletes, especially at the professional level. At the professional level, they've been military structured their entire college career, and now the tables have turned. Now they're paid, and now it's a business. So of course, the first couple of years, especially, is when players tend to get a little lost, and it's up to us just to constantly educate them. They have to be educated that the way you might have partied in college and gotten away with it, it's different now. And your body's changing from when you're 19, 20 years old to 23, 24 years old. Your hormonal response changes, everything changes. It becomes harder every year. And you got to dedicate yourself to the process, which I think we do a good job of. I think that, like NFL draft prep, I'm pretty well known for. It's not all we do. It's what I'm most known for. But I don't look at that as just a program to make them run a fast 40. It's really a whole introduction to how they have to carry themselves as a professional. Now they're not forced to do anything. They have very, very limited times they're forced to go to a mandatory minicamp. They have to learn how to do this stuff on their own. It's one thing that the Players Union fought for in that collective bargaining agreement of 2011 is they wanted the ability to take care of their own body and not have to be constantly under the thumb of what the team said. So now what that comes with that is responsibility of learning regeneration, learning sleep, learning hydration, learning supplements and nutrition, learning all the things that's going to allow them to train the way they want to train. Most of them like to train hard, but it's hard to train hard, as you said, when you roll in from the club or something like that. It's up to us to educate them that no matter what they might have gotten away with in college or in high school, they might have been successful in spite of that, not because of that. And I think it's just a constant education process. If they happen to go out and get less sleep and they come in and we were due for a high neural day and we have to back off and do a download day, it is what it is. But we can't push beyond the realms of what the threshold of body states at that time. And, when you start educating them on that stuff, you start to see people buy in and buy into the full system of everything we prescribe, including sleep, which is huge.
Boy, there's so many good nuggets that you just shared in that perspective. I could take this podcast a whole different direction, but maybe hopefully we'll do another one together. All right, so excellent job on mentality. Number 2, athleticism. Talk to us about the freaks, man. What do you see?
Well, I think, it's definitely important. I mean, if you look at athleticism, it's obvious. I mean, if we're talking about elite and professional athletes, specifically in that realm, of course they have to have the athleticism to play at this level. And even a sport like baseball. I mean, I think people are absolutely shocked when they see how athletic a baseball pitcher is. Just because they don't have to run at 25 miles an hour and they don't have to run and change directions doesn't mean they're not ridiculously athletic. You have to be gifted. I mean, I could teach anybody to maximize their speed, but if they're running really fast in the wrong direction on the field because they don't understand the game, they're not athletic enough to go within the game. I mean, it does nothing, So I think the athleticism has to be there, and we have to hone their athleticism through performance, just like the sport coaches have to hone that athleticism within what the position of the sport requires.
Now, you chose athleticism as your number 2. Let's dive a little bit deeper into, man, you're working with these elite level athletes. What do you see? What separates them athletically from someone who might have been a really good college player in their respective sport?
Recovery is a genetic trait. That's a big misconception. I mean, you have to understand recovery, but the great ones just are genetically gifted to repair tissue quicker. I mean, I say it a lot. You could take 2 people, same body type, same exact injury, same rehab protocol, same rehab staff. Certain people are going to recover quicker. Some people are just fast healers. It's a genetic gift. And I think that goes along with athleticism, is how genetically you are gifted to recover, regardless of the recovery mechanism. So obviously, if you are genetically gifted to recover quick and you add all the correct recovery modalities into it, you can survive in brutal sports like hockey and football and rugby and, to an extent, even sports like basketball. Basketball is not a high contact sport, but if you look at the contact of the joints with how many change directions and how many jump and landings they have to do, it's pretty extensive. It's very extensive. So I think all that has to be taken into consideration. When you talk about athleticism, it's your ability to recover just as well as your ability to adapt to training.
That's such an interesting take on that. It's probably one of the least things that people thought you would have said was recovery, but yet that was really, really good. All right.
Probably the thing I've learned the most. I mean, when I first started, I was like everybody else. You learn how to train. And since I really got deeper and deeper into this pro athlete thing, and this thing just kind of exploded on me, I had to become an expert at all forms of recovery. It's why I am an MAT therapist. I didn't do it because my passion is having somebody on a table doing MAT treatments all day. I have a staff for that. But I needed to understand the discipline enough to understand the specificity of training, the specificity of recovery.
So now, what I'm hearing is that you had to elevate your game with a level of athletes that have been coming to you. And I don't want to divert, but tell us a little bit about, you mentioned MAT is one of the methods that you use to elevate your game. What are some of the other things that Pete Bommarito's done to stay on the cutting edge and stay on top of his game?
I mean, I think overall with regards to RTS, that's something I believe deeply in. I've always been.
And what's that? For those that don't know, what's that stand for?
RTS is resistance training specialist. MAT is muscle activation techniques. Okay. So I've always been big on biomechanics. I got my master's degree in biomechanics. I did my thesis on 3-dimensional biomechanics. And I've always had a big interest in physics. I was pre-med as an undergrad. So obviously I took physics as part of my, course load because my fallback, my backup plan was go to med school. So I've always had a strong physics background, dating all the way back to high school. And that's just the way that I understand exercise. I've always understood exercise from a physics and a biomechanics standpoint. And when you combine things like RTS and MAT, it just really helps organize your thought processes correctly and how it relates to exercise. Everything about me is joint loading, joint forces. What's the external force? What's the directional force? What's the axis of rotation? What's the moment arm? When you look at exercise like that, you stop thinking about what exercise should I prescribe. You start thinking about how do I modify the exercise at this point in time to fit this client.
Love it, Pete. Love it. And we've talked about that in great detail before.
Yes.
Now, I noticed something. For those of you who are listening, Pete and I can see one another. And Pete was talking about recovery and sleep and so forth. And this is the most wide-eyed I've seen him in the last couple years, because I typically see him at the combine when he is flat out drained. You talk you talk about somebody that gives it all. Every time I see him at the combine, he's just fatigued to no end, because he's left it all on the table with his athletes. So
I'd say that much. Yeah, I definitely break my own rules of sleep and recovery when we get to that late February, March timeframe.
Yeah, man, you get after it there. Your number 3 was work ethic. Talk to us about there and give us an example, and I know where you're going to go with it, of someone who demonstrates a undeniable and consistent work ethic.
Yeah, so the work ethic, you have to take that with a grain of salt. Remember, it's not about working hard. Work ethic is about working smart, knowing when to go, when to back off, when to, understand we have a planned download, we have a planned unload. We don't have a planned download, but based off the nervous system of what we just analyzed, we have to download/unload. It's working smart. You can still work hard on a general preparatory phase. You can work hard on an MAT session. You can work hard during Pilates. You can work hard on an unload. It's about understanding and listening to the specialist, the coach, about when to go and when to back off. So the work ethic's got to be there, but it's also got to be there with regards to the sport. You have a lot of people that are passionate about training, but they're passionate about training because they're better at training than playing the sport. Sometimes you have to understand to sacrifice some training modes and focus more on the sport specificity. But at the same time, you can't be so entrenched in your position that all your training is position specific. Sometimes you got to have the building blocks to get the unknown specificity. So it works both ways. You got to have a work ethic with your sport, your position, your sport coach and position coach, as well as training with your performance coach, as well as with your nutritionist and your medical and rehabilitation team.
Let's rewind for a quick second here. Tell us about your process for determining the state of the nervous system. And once you have gathered that information, how do you use that information in order to guide the athlete through the training process?
I think it 100% goes back to manual therapy. That's the number one. I wouldn't say number one. That is probably the number one reason of why we use the medical team that most people don't understand, have never heard of before. It's kind of like the rehab team is you're injured, you rehab, you train. We use the medical team for that purpose, obviously, but we also use the medical team because it helps guide us on nervous system recovery. So you have all the tools and you have the different protocols that we've used, in terms of tracking their sleep and understanding quality of sleep, and possibly using something as advanced as the omega wave, or using different power tests and jump tests to measure the nervous system recovery. But I think a lot of it comes down to manual therapy. If you have a set pattern of inhibitions and you've corrected them, and then they come in and they're inhibited across the board, the nervous system is suppressed. If you have a download recovery day and the next day they come in and their tissue is full of fluid, either the nutrition's off, the recovery's off, or they did something during the recovery day they weren't supposed to do outside of my facility. So I think that great manual therapists getting their hands on athletes, you cannot substitute for that. There's no device, there's no test that's going to substitute for tracking their muscle activation patterns or inhibitions and fluid levels with the tissue, and I think that when you combine all those things, that is a better tracker for me in terms of somebody's nervous system recovery than any device that I've ever used.
Appreciate that. All right, example of somebody that had a great work ethic.
I hate to keep using the term Frank Gore, but is there really a better example? I don't think there is a better example. It makes me laugh every year to listen to the age factor and the running back factor and what the shelf life of a running back is and blah, blah, blah. Obviously he is effective. That's number one. He's a great running back. He doesn't just run the ball well. He's like an extra offensive tackle on the field. He does everything well. That's why he's able to survive in the league this long. But at the same time, the work ethic is there. I've never seen anybody more passionate about every single aspect it takes. I talked to his coaches at various teams. I talked to his former 49ers strength coach. They couldn't get him out of the building. Just in terms of watching film, The hardest part about Frank is sitting him down and letting him not practice to save his body. He wants to play. He loves football. He loves watching film. He lives and breathes and dies football. But at the same time, he does the exact same thing with all forms of his training and recovery. That's the work ethic that I want. When young players in the league, it's great to watch them gravitate towards players like that, or Greg Olson, or Rob Gronkowski, or Carlos Dunlop. These guys that have been in the league and are still playing at an extremely high level. And just look at what they do. The mentality, the work ethic comes with every single aspect. I think is huge. One of the best things I love about NFL draft prep is letting them see the players come in right after the season in January and February, when their thought process of why aren't these guys taking a break? Well, they are taking a break. They're taking a break appropriately by doing regeneration and GPP phases. It's the same way with baseball. They start coming in the day after the season ends, not training, but recovering and training appropriately. And same thing with now that we're getting really deep into basketball and especially pro soccer. They have very, very, very little time off because they play so much. There's a lot of summer leagues in basketball. There's a lot of winter leagues in baseball. Soccer, I don't think they ever take a break. But when they do have a break, it isn't coming in to train intensely. It's to come in and train appropriately. I think that all the athletes I have in different sports just really exemplify that factor, whether you're in a difficult sport like soccer that never stops, or a regimented sport like football that definitely has their little seasons and mini camps and stuff.
I appreciate that perspective. You're number 4, the 24/7 athlete. It's like a game show right now, Pete.
Yeah. I mean, the 24/7 goes right back to a lot of the factors we already discussed.
Yeah.
The understanding of what's the best form of recovery. Sleep. Okay, how many hours do you sleep, and what is your quality of sleep? There is great supplements out there. There's great supplements that are NSF certified for sport. That means it's cleared by all the major, sporting organizations. And I think that people are looking at ways to enhance recovery while they sleep. You can stabilize your hormonal levels. Your hormonal levels will peak when you're sleeping. How do you maximize that? There's a lot of different great nutritional and supplementation aspects you can do to help maximize your number of sleep and quality of sleep. And I think that those things are vastly understated. So the 24/7 athlete, you can't just come in and train hard and then go out and be an idiot. You have to really pay attention to your lifestyle choices and your sleeping choices and just overall how you spend your free time.
Now, would you be at liberty to say which one of those supplements that you were referring to that's really good for sleep?
I mean, obviously I'm definitely, I'd say Thorne is my go-to. I mean, I know maybe I'm biased because I have a good agreement and a good business relationship with Thorne. But again, I chose Thorne for a reason. I could have chose anybody. We chose Thorne because they have the most supplements that is NSF certified for sport, number 1. And when you look at some of the recovery mechanisms that I believe deeply in, they have it, and they have it certified for sport, like melatonin is a good example. Zinc, and ZMA has been well known for a while, what you take before bed. But I kind of like having the high level micronutrient that is zinc, and the high level micronutrient that is that cal-magnite citrate. So if you look at combining the calcium with the zinc and the magnesium and the melatonin all right before you sleep, you're seeing significant changes in your ability and your quality of sleep. So again, obviously I'm biased towards Thorne, but they have the best products on the market. That's why I chose that relationship.
Pete, what product contains those micronutrients you just mentioned?
They have the Thorne melatonin, they have the Thorne zinc, they have the Thorne cal-mag citrate. Those 3 things are our go-to right before bed. A standard multivitamin that's good with nutrients AM and PM. So they split up the multivitamins. I think a good fish oil is essential. I think if you really want to get deep into micronutrient deficiencies, we've run blood work labs on literally hundreds of athletes. It all comes back. Almost all of them are deficient in the same things, like B12 and vitamin D. When you start supplementing those things that are, common deficiencies of anybody that lives in this country, overall, your metabolism works better, your recovery works better. And if you take it at key times, your sleep can be a lot more effective.
That's some good insight. I'm getting ready to get on their website right now, Big Pete. I'm sold. All right. Now, your number 5 was thought process. What's the difference between thought process and mentality? And just elaborate on why you chose thought process as like one of the 5 common denominators.
I mean, the mentality, I was talking more about the mentality of actual repetition with training, repetition with recovery, and things like that. I think that overall, when you look at the thought process, it's encompassing everything as a whole. Like we already talked about lifestyle choices and things like that. I think that there's a huge misconception, even with young pro athletes, on how to combat pain. Pain and joint inflammation is going to be common when you're in a contact sport. Pain and joint inflammation is going to be common when you're doing things the human body wasn't meant to do, like throw a baseball, spike a volleyball, swimming, golf, these types of repetitive motions that's only on one side of the body. So there's going to be a clear imbalance. It's a thought process with understanding that, joint stress is a necessary part of playing some of these sports, and repeating the same imbalanced motion like throwing is a part of these sports. And it's understanding what stress is unnecessary and what stress is appropriate. That goes back into the dangers of being too sport specific and too position specific too early and having too much volume. I think we've developed a great relationship with a lot of professional teams because they know when we get them in, we are not just going to bring in some position guru and run them into the ground and repeat the exact same repetitive patterns they're going to see in practice and in the season. Sometimes you just have to reverse the motion, get the body better in balance, get the joints aligned, and that's training appropriately. So it's a thought process on the building blocks of training. We're guilty of it too. If you look at our Instagram channel, it's all the stuff that looks great and sports specific. But people have to understand that that is the end product. That is not what we do at the beginning of the off season. In order to get that specificity of training, you have to have the building blocks. And I think that with the rise of social media, it's just unfortunately becoming a lost art in our industry. And the athletes have to understand that even if the training is not specific, it's not exactly what they do, they're doing different patterns that's not specific to their position. It's a means to an end. It's a building block to get the specificity. But when you get to that specificity phase, your joints are appropriately aligned to be able to withstand those forces.
All right. Let's pretend Dwayne Carlisle is an elite level athlete. I stroked the big check for Bommarito Performance Systems, right? What would a typical first week be like for me?
I mean, number one, you go through an evaluation of all my medical disciplines. Now, we will not do it in the same day because that's just overload. I mean, the manual testing itself could fry your nervous system. So I think that we start with physical therapy always, and we kind of spread out the medical disciplines in terms of the eval based on what the doctor of physical therapy prescribes. Based off that, once we get the baseline and we submit the training protocol to the therapist, they redesign the training protocol accordingly. So then we'll hit the field. We'll do field work, whether you're a throwing athlete, a running athlete, a combat athlete, we got to do some field work. I mean, you could do, like we have a 5-star overhead athlete program. We have a 5-star combat athlete program. We have our speed and movement protocols for athletes. We have our strength, endurance, power endurance continuum. So we have to look at how much time do we have you for? Is it a 1-week crash course of education, or we legitimately have you the whole off season? If we have you for the whole off season, how long is your off season? If we have you for the off season, do we have mini camps and showcases and winter ball or anything like that coming up? And we have to set the periodization model. So beginning, we will put you into a general preparatory phase on the field and a general preparatory phase in the weight room. A lot of it's going to be based on isometrics. A lot of it's going to be based on, single joint isolated motions and getting all the segments aligned. So when you get to the multi-joint exercise of squat, press, and things you want to do, it's appropriate at that time. So that's how we would start.
Okay. I think you get me right there, Pete. I think you get me right, man. All right. So now, one of the things, your 5 common denominators, outstanding. would you add competing as a sixth? Because I know this. Frankie G says to me all the time, he said, Coach, I got to test myself against these young guys. He said, down at Pete's, I would imagine later in your periodization models, you get closer to those guys going to camp. I'm just saying, based on what I get from Frank, it gets hot. And I mean, not just that Florida hot, humidity heat. It gets hot in terms of the competition. Would you add that as a 5A?
Yeah, definitely, because that goes back into the thought process. So
okay.
There's a time to work on individualization. There's a time to compete. We have a lot of athletes that come in that just sign up for our program. They go into group training. But they understand that group training is kind of a misleading term. We're going to put them in a group, but if what the group is doing is different than what they need at that time, as much as they want to compete, they have to come back and work with one of my coaches one-on-one during different parts of that session. So they might be out in a competition atmosphere, but they got to make the training specific to them. We get in the weight room and we have assigned lower body exercise. Everybody's doing lower body. We start with a prep, then we get into our squat hinge. The squat hinge might be a lot different from this person, that person, even if they're working in the same rack. Or this person might need a 20-minute prep phase where this person needs a 5-minute prep phase. They have to have the thought process and the overview to understand that, yeah, you're going to squat and hinge. And yeah, you're not going to be able to squat with your buddy because we need 20 minutes of a prep phase where he needs 5. The thought process has to be there where you can compete when it's appropriate. And we try to do that as much as we can for the people that want it. But you got to be smart enough to understand that you're also progressing at your own rate of the way your body's aligned and the injuries you've had and the wear and tear of the season.
Yeah. Now, high school athletes. I know you guys got a ton of high school athletes that you work with within your 2 facilities. Tell me a little bit about how your approach changes from the high school athlete compared to obviously the elite level athlete.
I mean, our approach is the exact same. The competition factor has to be a little bit higher because, young athletes like to compete and, obviously they're not going to be able to afford as much one-on-one training. So they're going to work within a group. But again, they have still not reached even the remote baseline of where their athleticism is going to take them. So it's the same style of workouts. It's just got to be more simplified. They can't handle as much extreme joint loading. They can't handle as much advanced plyometrics and overspeed work and things like that. They have to understand the building blocks a lot more. And the paying parents are getting in there and wanting sports specificity. And we went to this facility and it's lacrosse and everybody's running around with lacrosse sticks and they got bands on the lacrosse sticks and they're constantly just repeating the motion. And, my pitcher has a band and he's got a weighted med ball we're throwing reverse and everything's about band resistance this and band resistance that. But it's harder at the high school level because you have to deal with the sport coaches and the parents. But again, it goes back to education. We have a sport specificity, position specificity segment to all of our sessions, but it's always last and the building blocks have to come before that final segment. And when you structure it like that, the last thing they remember is here's the transfer. But they have to understand the building blocks. And so same way, just simplified.
What are the building blocks for a high school athlete?
I mean, you just look at what the body does. Lower body, you will squat and you will hinge. It can be double leg, it can be single leg. The resistance has to match their developmental growth cycle. If they're a freshman in high school and they're still in a growth spurt, you can't axle load. You can load, but you can't compress the spine. The same way with pressing. Upper body, you have pressing, you have pulling. And you have all your different segments that will support a press or a pull. So that's really it. It's understanding the squat hinge pattern with your lower body, understanding the posterior chain and what all the segments does with regards to plantar flexion, knee flexion, hip extension, understanding those things, not really thinking that this exercise is for this sport and that exercise for that sport. Everybody squats, everybody hinges. It's the loading pattern that has to be set up based off their developmental growth cycle, not their sport, not their position, not their gender, not their age, not even their experience level. It's where they're at with their developmental growth cycle. So when we do our evaluation at that level, we not only do a medical-based evaluation, we are definitely looking at their growth cycle, when did they hit their growth spurt? How long did it last? And how many months has it been since they stopped growing? That's all going to be a key factor at whether you can or cannot do axle loading where you're compressing spine versus not.
So once they've hit peak height velocity.
Yes, that's peak height velocity is what I term as what a lot of people call puberty.
Gotcha. Well, look, Pete, this has been outstanding, man. Outstanding. Tell us, how can we get more of Bommarito systems? Someone's out there, they want to get more. You got Bommarito University, you have social media, you guys are all over the place. So how can we get more?
Well, we try to do a little bit for everybody. So the members only website will be set up where you could do a basic level or a premium level. The basic level is really inexpensive. It's mainly set up for sport coaches. So I have tons and tons of people that email me. I'm a football coach in Oregon. I'm a volleyball coach in Pittsburgh, all over the world. I'm a sport coach, but I need to train my team. My high school, my organization isn't set up to be able to pay a strength coach. So if I'm implementing training for my team, how do I do it? The basic level is set up for those people. It's got a great database. It's got great resources, sample programs, and it's got 24/7 access to Pete and my team. The premium level has more webinars and detailed coaching videos. That's more for a strength coach or a personal trainer. So at least that, they can get on the members only website and get a great access to not just what the exercise database is, but 10, 15-minute coaching videos on the science behind what exercise it is, what's the scientific background of it, what's implementation strategies, and how do you organize it within a group or a team. So I think that we put the members only website up because it's a great affordable way for everybody to get access to the latest science. And we have a discussion board, a forum where somebody can just email me a question right on the Facebook forum, right on the discussion board, and I'll answer within 24 hours. Somebody can request different sample programs and workouts, and we just upload them immediately. We have 3 to 5 uploads a week. Beyond that, obviously we have our level 1 workshop, we have our level 2 mentorship, we have our baseline certifications. That's kind of like our level 3. And then we also do online programming. I have my own training app now you can get off Apple and Google. And even strength coaches and personal trainers working with, hey, I got a high level athlete for the first time. Here's all of my equipment. Here's the modes and here's the injuries. Can you just construct a program with an idea format of what to do? And they can take that baseline and we give them, different tips on how to modify it based on what they see. So based off the online program, the workshops and all that, I think we have a good education platform for everybody.
Yeah, sounds like it. Don King was often referred to as the busiest man in show business. You're the busiest man in sports performance. You got 2 young kids.
Yes.
How's that going, man? Good?
Yeah, my son's 4.
Oh.
He's in taekwondo. He's in flag football, basketball, soccer, baseball, or I guess t-ball. My daughter's 2. She's in gymnastics and everything. So, yeah, we're grooming them to take over so I can retire soon.
Yeah, man, that is awesome. Well, Pete, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate you. And again, Pete Bommarito, have a great day. Well, you can see why Pete Bommarito and Bommarito Performance Systems is recognized as one of the premier training facilities in the world. 3 things stood out to me. 1, they're medical. They've assembled a comprehensive medical team to service their athletes. 2, the nutrition. They dial the nutrition in from a performance perspective as well as a recovery. And the 3rd, Pete Bommarito has a passion for helping athletes elevate their performance through education. He's constantly striving to be the best at what he does and deliver the highest level service. I want to thank him for being on the show and sharing his 5 common denominators. I thought those are nothing short of phenomenal. I love the 24/7 athlete. I loved all 5 of them. And from Pete's perspective, it's great nuggets to grab a hold of because he's worked with some of the elite. We too have opened a performance center in San Jose, California, and we would love the opportunity to train with you. If you're a coach, please stop by. If you're an athlete, come on in. If you're a business exec, we'd love to work with you to help your best get even better. Please subscribe to the show, and in the meantime and between time, make it a great day.